Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. The inventory shows rumble on. Our second coronavirus special features a broad array of watches, all of which are for sale. Email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com for sales, prices, and trades. Reach out directly to me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Names and references for the watches are in the description below, and prices are in the description below. Comment away, and of course subscribe. Let's get started. Here's a watch that, frankly, to me, is pretty darn close to perfect. Launched back in 2015, this is the H. Moser Cie Venturer Big Date, so-called not because it features a conventional big date or double-digit date, but because it has what is quite literally a very big date. Now, this is accomplished using an ingenious mechanism I'll demonstrate real quick, but in the intermediate setting position, you can set the date forward or backwards, but take a look. Mid-transition, there is a superimposed disc over the underlying disc, because to have a date this large would actually take up more space if it were a mono disc than the interior of the case allows. So two superimposed discs are used to allow each individual numeral to be oversized and highly legible. Now, of course, the watch does have a hacking or snap seconds function, and this 41.5mm white gold beauty has a lovely multi-layer lacquer dial with radially arrayed Roman numerals. And note the uncommon use of a true Roman numeral 4 rather than a watchmaker's 4. Blue fired steel hands, and so you can see a graceful Moser Venturer case. The Venturer Big Date features lovely concave mirror polished scalloped segments on its side, and you can see vertically satin finished segments mid case, a beautiful dome style bezel with a matching oversized domed crystal, remarkable camber, a simple white gold pin buckle, and caliber 100 on the reverse side. Don't be deceived, it is a fearsome thing. Twin mainspring barrels, 7-day rated power reserve, 9 days is its absolute reserve. It will run for 9. You can see there's a power reserve indicator, a free sprung balance with a full bridge for shock resistance, and overcoil hairspring. The watch is adjusted in 6 positions. It is their own Straumann alloy overcoil. You'll also note that there is a solid gold escapement operating unlubricated to reduce parasitic losses and also improve performance between servicing. Twin mainspring barrels, you can see there are 2 pivots, double crested cote de Genève, and a pocket watch inspired swan's neck style click spring. The timepiece is beautifully adorned with handsome finish, and of course Moser makes all of these parts via its subsidiary Precision Engineering, making the balance, the hairspring, even the escapement in-house. Swiss made indeed. Let's take a look at it on my wrist. 16 centimeters in circumference, a gorgeous piece, comfortable and compact. You can see it's only about 14.5mm thick, but a lot of that is the sapphire, so it does slide easily under a dress cuff. A late and much missed entry in the Rolex catalog. This is the Rolex GMT-Master II. It is the 116710 all black bezel, ceramic insert with platinum deposits for the numerals. The watch is 40mm in diameter, and of course it is the squared off super case, sheer and imposing. It looks like a 42 on the wrist. I remember after 2018, these began to take off as a discontinued and much loved niche within the GMT collection. The all black has a classical Rolex look to it, almost indistinguishable from the sub at a distance, and some might even say a bit of a connoisseur's piece in an age in which Pepsis, Batman, and root beers have all gone a bit nuts. This is the more austere and, dare I even say, slightly Teutonic Rolex, recalling the Hans Wilsdorf lineage of the Rolex brand. The timepiece is nice and slim on the wrist, about 12.6mm thick, true dual time capability with a 24-hour hand, and of course that GMT script in green on the dial. You have the true dual time capability and then the 24-hour bezel that allows you to offset from GMT if the 24-hour hand is set accordingly, and temporarily display 3 time zones on the dial. Of course, the first examples launched in 1954 for Pan Am pilots. It was originally a professional pilot's watch, and it remains one of the most stylish all-purpose sports accessories in the business, with a chronometer certified caliber with a 48-hour automatic winding power reserve and a 100-meter water resistance. So this is a true sporting all-arounder. And you can see there is an easy link 5mm tool-free extension built into the clasp, and it is a double measure clasp with 2 locking facilities, one a vertical trigger, the other a clamshell. Sticking with our Rolex theme for a moment, this is probably my all-time favorite Daytona. Now, I go back and forth on this, but this was part of the Daytona Beach collection launched back in 2000. The first of the in-house caliber Daytonas, and they started with one hell of a fireworks show in mother of pearl pink and yellow with a chrysoprase green dial and this explosive light blue lacquer white gold model. The timepiece, one of the few Rolex factory lizard straps you'll encounter with a lovely matching electric blue. This watch is suited to the Florida sun, not just at the Speedway, but the beaches beyond. White gold Roman numerals on the dial, and here you can see we are using a watchmaker's 4. The timepiece has a caliber 4130 3-day power reserve, vertical clutch column wheel, automatic chronometer inside. We'll throw this one on the wrist. I have to say this is probably my favorite Daytona, rivaled only by the chrysoprase green version of the same model line. Handsome, vibrant, explosive, and almost the anti-Rolex. This is for the watch collector who's not really a Rolex guy and wants something that's a bit more expressive, iconoclastic, colorful, and one might even say a bit more French Swiss than your typical Rolex watch. A handsome and flat piece. It's only 12.2 millimeters on the wrist, and of course, if you throw it on a water-resistant band, it is 100 meters water-resistant. I like it a lot, and pusher feel for the column wheel is world-class and standard of the industry. Let's stick with the folks from Geneva right now and talk a bit about their most complicated watch ever. When this launched back in 2012, the Sky-Dweller was a bit of a blindside broadside. That is, it hit unexpectedly and massively. A GMT and an annual calendar, it's 100 meters water resistant, a chronometer, and a 3-day power reserve. Inside, Rolex caliber 9001, featuring an annual calendar system, and we'll demonstrate how this works. A GMT and an annual calendar, it's pretty straightforward. In the first position, I can wind the watch with the crown, but I can't actually do anything. Now, if I turn the bezel, the ring command bezel, which is part of the movement, one click counterclockwise, all of a sudden I can adjust the date and the calendar. You note how there are 12 hours and 12 months? That's how the annual calendar system works. You can see outboard of the 1 o'clock index, there's a little red square, and as I move from January to February, the watch makes that jump. You can see the red square moving through the apertures, and it is bi-directional, so I can move the annual calendar in both directions. It need be adjusted only once a year during the jump from February to March. Turn one more counterclockwise measure, and you can see I'm able to adjust the local hour hand, and I'm able to drive the date forward with that. But note, the watch is still ticking. Now I turn the bezel all the way, justified counterclockwise, and the watch is now in hacking or stop seconds mode, and I can set everything in sync. And you see how I set that 24-hour central register. So it is an easy and straightforward GMT to set, as well as a useful and handy annual calendar with a wonderful cloaked complication that's almost worthy of Andreas Streller, he of the cloaked complications. Now, of course, this timepiece fits easily, 42 millimeters in rose gold. It's not as big as it looks, nor is it as thick, as it will easily slide underneath the cuff. And the timepiece, as you can see, is more of a big date just. This is not the super case. It's a lovely flowing, fluid, and lush case, red gold, and beautiful sinuous lines. There's nothing left to be desired. Throw it on a water-resistant strap, it's even swimmable and fully loomed. Okay, and now for something completely different. This is the IWC Aquatimer Charles Darwin. Launched back at SIHH 2014, the most recent year of the Aquatimer. It was the first ever bronze IWC Aquatimer. 44 millimeters in diameter, has a unidirectional rotating, ratcheting internal safe dive bezel that is fully loomed, and you can line it up with the minute hand and time 2 events concurrently, one with the chronograph, one with the bezel. What appears to be a helium valve on the flank is actually a cover for the differential system that engages that unidirectional ratcheting bezel, and then you can see underneath the system borrowed from the Cartier Roadster, a quick release for each of the straps so you can rapidly swap out and change the look of your watch as well as clean closely. You see the man himself, Charles Darwin, who proposed the theory of evolution after his voyage to the Galapagos on the HMS Beagle. We'll get a little bit closer. You can see there's a lot going on this dial. Caliber 89365, manufacturer movement inside. It has both a quick set and stop seconds. It's a flyback chronograph. Note the use of an unusual 60-minute chronograph register, automatic winding with a 4-pawl IWC Peloton winding system. It is remarkably sophisticated, and it features a flyback action so you can reset and restart with a push of a button. The timepiece is also 120 meters water resistant. So, as you can see, an absolute dream on the wrist, comfortable, substantial, flush with features. Pardon me, this one is 300 meters water resistant, my mistake. Flush with features, and although it's a 44, those short stubby lugs ensure that it wears easily and comfortably on the wrist. All IWC inside and out. This one is less patina prone than a standard bronze watch, but looks great all the same. A handsome and durable all-around manufacture movement flyback diving chronograph from IWC. This is the 379503 Charles Darwin. Now, let's talk about a brand rarely discussed online, and that's Arnold Son. These folks do incredible things. The official brand of La Journe, which is an integrated manufacturer owned by Citizen. This is a Swiss monster, 46 millimeters in diameter, but remarkably 53.5 millimeters lug to lug and wearable. Stainless steel, this is the TB88, the TrueBeat 88 with two mainspring barrels on elaborate bridges, providing 100-hour power reserve. You can see there is a deadbeat seconds mechanism. There is a balance beating away at 18,000 vibrations per hour with an overcoil hairspring, and not only is it all high horology finish with beautiful beveling and handsome satination as well as black polished screws, but you get to enjoy the caliber 5003 entirely on the dial side. Now the watch does feature a remarkable anchor style detent deadbeat second mechanism on the reverse side, so you can actually watch the deadbeat second system operating on the mechanical end, not just on the consumer side. The twin mainspring barrels with a double spiral on the underside, featuring that ratchet wheel, double spiral with a black polished screw center. You can see there's a lovely nickel anthracite coating across the bridges. Other elements that are not nickel anthracite and satin finished with media blasting are beautifully brushed horizontally. Anything but conventional Swiss Côte de Genève. A beautiful watch that's surprisingly easy to wear. This launched back in 2012, and though a 46, it wears nothing like a conventional 46 on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, arcing nicely across the wrist. You can see that the bars, which retain the strap, are held by screws, an upscale refinement, and the lugs themselves are handsomely pared down and curved, so the timepiece is both visually striking and ergonomically outstanding. Again, a 100-hour manual wind power reserve and the works in terms of finish and detailing. Let's talk about FP Journe for a minute. Let's talk about the FP Journe Tourbillon Souverain. Yes, it features a remontoire d'égalité constant force device, and you can see that in action with a different kind of deadbeat second system. The remontoire issues a pulse of energy to the escapement once a second. It also doubles as the underlying mechanism for the deadbeat seconds display. If you look at the tourbillon, it's a 60-second tourbillon. If you look right adjacent, you have a deadbeat second indicator, power reserve indicator. This one works like a marine chronometer, in which you would want to know when the system was 24 hours from its last winding, because you need to wind a deck clock at the same time every day, 24 hours from the last winding. That's why this display, like the power reserve on a marine chronometer, runs backward to show you the hours since the last full wind. You wind it at 24 if you're at sea. Everywhere else, you want to make sure you keep this watch above 30 hours of power reserve, because it defaults to conventional sweep seconds with about 12 hours remaining to keep the watch running. Now, if you look closely, and I'll get as close as I can here, the balance is beating away underneath a filigree style black polished tourbillon carriage under a continuously rounded specular finish or black polished half bridge. There is a free sprung architecture, 6-position adjustment, a 21/6 beat rate, and an overcoil hairspring made by hand. You have a white gold dial, a platinum case, and a rare early FP Journe platinum bracelet. You could see the maker's marks. I'll do my best to show this on the underside. The French as well as the Swiss maker's marks for the bracelet. This is an old French-made Eleanor case, and as you can see, you have both the Swiss and the French hallmarks on the end links of the bracelet as well. The bracelet, which is a $50,000 accessory if you buy it separately from Journe, is not just a lush and extravagant piece to have included on the watch, but to have one that is period correct to the watch, which is also an Eleanor case, is very special. As you can see, the movement itself, and I'm going to get close as I can here. It's a little bit tough. There we go. The movement itself is made of solid gold, 18 karat rose gold. So platinum case, white gold dial, rose gold movement, and platinum bracelet. You better believe this thing feels like a ton of precious metal on the wrist. because it is quite literally an immense amount of mass. Flat and flush though, it's easy to wear, only 48 millimeters lug to lug, so I can recommend it for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. This is about as stylish, compact, and discreet as a dial-side tourbillon gets, and as good as FP Journe watchmaking gets, as this is one of the canonical models you're going to want to own, along with your Chronomètre Bleu and your Resonance. That said, rarity counts, and what we have with this early brass movement, FP Journe Octa Automatic Lune, or moon phase, is a combination of the discontinued 38mm case, a lovely media-blasted yellow gold dial, the moon phase, and of course that early brass movement caliber 1300 in its original form with bidirectional winding action. It's still a 5-day rated power reserve. In fact, it will run for 7, but chronometric is 5 days. You can see it beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, free sprung, a 22-karat winding mass with a Grand Doge or barley corn style guilloche cut. It's a lovely juxtaposition of colors, and again, you have rarity on several levels with the discontinued case size, the discontinued brass movement, and of course you have another one of those French-made Eleanor cases, as Eleanor outside of Paris fabricated FP Journe's watches, or his watch cases I should say, all the way back to his pocket watch days, and he finally purchased them around 2008 and moved the whole thing to Geneva as Boîtier de Genève, his in-house dial factory. You have a double-digit date with a quick-set mechanism, and of course you have those FP Journe dial-side black polished bolts. The dial-side bolts initially criticized in the late 90s, today copied by everyone. It was a true trend-setting design element, but you can only be first once, and this watch has got it. Of course, you've got a matching pin buckle, FP Journe of course, on this timepiece, which wears easily on any size wrist thanks to the friendly 38mm case size. Easy to wear and comfortable. It's handsome, and the consummate dress complication is it easily slides underneath a short cuff. This is a timepiece that wears well on any wrist size too. Considered to be vintage FP Journe, you might have noticed that the case back said 2004. That would have been when the case itself was made, and the last of the brass movement watches would have been produced in mid-2004, so this is also one of the last of the rare early brass movement watches. Rare because not only are they discontinued, but back in those days FP Journe was producing considerably fewer than its current roughly 900 watches per year. Let's interrupt our FP Journe kick for just a moment to remind you that if there were truly a holy quartet, not just holy trinity, a Lange Sohne of Saxony would have to be part of the set. One of the four corners, as I consider it in the modern era. This is the 1815 Up-Down, a power reserve featuring a 72-hour manual wind power reserve caliber 0521. The timepiece is 39mm in white gold and under 9mm thick, compact, flush, flat on the wrist. It's also charming on its dial side, featuring the 1815 family's vertically arrayed Arabic numerals. There is a railroad-style minute track outboard, and the dial itself is actually made of sterling silver. So you have a white gold case, a sterling silver dial that is anodized, or I should say galvanized, this silver-white coloration, and then you turn it all over, and with most Lange watches, this is where the fun really starts, as you get to see the degree of finishing, as well as the design. It's not just the finishing, it's the way the movement's laid out. With the pocket watch evocative 3/4 style bridge, you could see the pivot jewels set in screw-fixed chaton. You could see that the German silver material and nickel copper zinc alloy is nice and golden because of the presence of the copper. There's a freehand engraved half bridge for the balance, and you can see a black polished swan's neck with a black polished cover to the escape wheel pivot. The timepiece gloriously executed with both black polished and fired blue screws. It is special in that it's adjusted in 5 positions, which is the chronometer and high horology standard. Manual wind 3-day power reserve with a stop seconds function. You can truly see the level of the beveling or the anglage on the edge of the bridge. I need to realize at some point that I need an entirely different vocabulary to describe these German watches. I need to know how to pronounce all of these finishing techniques in German, so perhaps some of our viewers can begin to educate me in the comments below. A timepiece that wears easily because it's flat, thin, short across the wrist, and at 39mm, the perfect size for a modern men's dress watch. Not too small, not too large, recommended for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, and again, on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, no issues here. It is a great unisex option, and you do have that lovely and endearing power reserve to balance out the constant seconds down at 4 o'clock, so a beautifully balanced dial, and a timepiece that is emblematic of the best of modern-day German watchmaking craft. Let us jump back to the world of IWC Schaffhausen. We've had 3 watches from Schaffhausen on the show today. We had the Moser, we had the IWC Aquatimer Charles Darwin, and we have this extravagant IWC Father Big Pilot's watch, part of the 2008 set, which also included a 3255 Mark Series Sun. This one is outstanding in that the darn thing is crafted from precious metal platinum. You can see the hallmarks. 46.2 millimeters in platinum. The mass of this watch with platinum clasp is incredible. Almost 57 millimeters lug to lug with a crown that is by itself almost 11 millimeters in diameter. The watch is everything that a big pilot's watch is, inspired by the vintage Luftwaffe BR of 1940 that used the Type 52 TSC IWC movement. This one is powered by a 50,000 series 7-day automatic that features both anti-magnetic protection and blowout protection, which is to say if you're in a cabin that explosively decompresses at altitude, this watch will not eject its seals or its crystals. Screw down crown, 60-meter water resistance, so it is swimmable. You can see the power reserve indicator on the dial side. You can also see that the watch features a lovely silver sunburst dial with exceptional character. Throw it on the wrist, the watch feels like a ton of fun, which it is. It's too big for me, but that's the look. You can wear it on a 16-centimeter circumference wrist, but remember, the Luftwaffe original was 55 millimeters, so if anything, this is the son of the grandfather. The timepiece, of course, with a solid case back, because it does feature those blowout protection and anti-magnetic qualities, features the Peloton winding system with ratchet and pawl internally. It's free sprung with a handmade overcoil hairspring, and it's adjusted in 5 positions internally with a 21.6 beat rate. The clasp by itself is more massive than some dress watches I have experienced, and you can see you get a big solid disc of platinum on the reverse side. Is this special? Do I have to answer that? One of the most extreme watches you will ever find from any brand ever, the Platinum 5004-13. Okay, let's go crazy for a moment. De Bethune of Lauberson, Switzerland. The De Bethune brand is probably the best combination of value and technology that you will find among the independents, other than maybe Swatch and Rolex as wholes. I don't think you could say any brand spends more on basic science research and development relative to its size. What we have here is the 2019 DB28 gold tones. Now the watch is actually made of titanium, and it is fired for a briefer period than a blue color would demand. A brief firing here produces this patented gold effect on grade 5 titanium. 42.7 millimeters in diameter. The watch features the signature spring-loaded floating lugs of De Bethune, and you can see there is actually an adjuster for the moon phase right next to the pivot for the lugs. I should mention that the watch has a 6-day manual wind power reserve with a case-back power reserve indicator courtesy of the caliber 2115. You can even see the mechanism that drives the indicator. Now the watch is also slender at under 12 millimeters thick, so don't think this is a big bruiser. It's actually quite delicate, light and wieldy on the wrist. A lot of patents here. There's the patented spherical moon phase, and as you can see, it is a full sphere of steel and white palladium that rotates. It has an adjustment interval of over 1,000 years, so set it and forget it, boys. Twin mainspring barrels under a delta-shaped bridge with a black polished, and as you can see, golden oxidized cover. That is in steel, and it is golden oxidized over the basic bridge, which features Côte de Bethune. You can also see satination of the 2 barrels, and then there are titanium spheres outboard that act as the hour indices. You'll also note there's a serrated minutes track for easy reading, and then de Bethune with its own balance, its own silicon escape wheel, its own triple parachute, triple shock protection system, its own flat hairspring that beats concentrically like an overcoil, and all of this technology from a brand that only makes 150 watches a year, so exclusivity is assured. If you want space age style with space age tech, this is really the only game in town in the independent segment. Only Grubel Forsey really rivals them for pure R&D among the independents, and with watchmaking maestro Denis Flageolet working away, you have basically every watch collector's dream. Watches that are fairly priced, rarely sold, and for which almost the entire corporate budget is expended on basic science, research, finish, and execution. You know where your money's going when you buy one of these watches. By the way, the DB28, the Aiguille d'Or winner back in 2011, the grand prize at the Oscars of watchmaking. Let's jump back to Francois Paul's neck of the woods. Now, this is a watch that came out in 2015, and I'll always remember this because I saw FP Journe wearing the prototype. After being somewhat chastened by rushing new concepts to market in the mid-2000s, he became possibly the most strenuous first-hand stress tester of new watches in the industry, trying to break every new watch under his name. And this watch was designed to make it hard to bust, as it eliminates the risk of the owner trying to adjust his perpetual calendar with a pen. The timepiece you see here, of course, is the Quantieme Perpetuel, launched in 2015. The watch is all of platinum with a white gold dial and a brilliant perpetual calendar system that features no obvious external adjustments. You can make some of the adjustments using the crown. Let me just make sure we rotate through. There you go. You can see it as an instantaneous change. The leap year cycle is indicated by a stub index at center under the cannon pinion, or I should say over the cannon pinion under the hands. Now you can make most of the basic adjustments to the calendar using the crown, but in order to adjust the month, there is a brilliant hidden adjuster system. I may not have the nails to dig this out right now, but you could see it. It is a small trigger actuator that you pull out from under the lug, and then you can switch the months. So you can make all of the adjustments, first without breaking the watch, and second without requiring a fiddly tool. Throw it on the wrist. It is an imposing thing, comfortable, platinum, solid, and internally solid gold. Note the lovely Jean Rousseau strap we fitted to this one, a Parisian double alligator leather. It's gator on the top and bottom for longevity. Now the timepiece features a solid gold movement. Unlike the tourbillon we saw earlier, and unlike the caliber 1300 in brass, this is a solid 18 karat rose gold movement. It will run, remember, for 7 days, even though the chronometric power reserve is 5. It beats away at 21.6 free sprung, and it is elaborately finished. FP Journe finish is a combination of mechanical and artisanal. I'll be honest about that. It's one of the reasons that FP Journe pricing is probably the most honest in the business. De Bethune is good, but in terms of pricing a watch relative to what it costs to make, I think FP Journe is the best on that front. Now the timepiece is truly special, and as you can see, this one in 42 millimeters, I should be more clear about that, is the larger case size option, and I find that with the crowded perpetual calendar dial, the 42 is actually the way to go if you do buy this particular watch. So if you have a bigger wrist, this is going to be the one you're going to want. Handsome, needing adjustment, well, frankly, never, as long as you wear it every day. It can deal with leap years, it can deal with irregular length months. Set it and forget it. Enjoy it all the way. And of course, there is a matching platinum pin buckle. By the way, how much did you love that purple strap? It really makes the watch. We don't do much Panerai on the show, and that's a little bit unfortunate because the brand actually helped to get me into watches in the very early 2000s. This right here is the PAM 1036. It's the Luminor GMT Luna Rossa. Now, Luna Rossa is the challenger of record for the 36th America's Cup, which will be held in 2021. You know this because it says so on the dial, and the dial is something special. We're familiar with sailcloth straps from the likes of Blancpain and others, but have you ever seen a sailcloth dial? That's what we have right here. The watch is 44 millimeters in titanium, and it features a sailcloth dial. So the dial itself is made of the same material that is used to fabricate sails on professional vessels. I must say that the timepiece is also thematically appropriate, as Panerai is historically a nautical brand. The first Panerai watches from the 30s through the 80s being attached to Italian naval special warfare units, so it makes sense that Panerai is looking to broaden its aquatic chops by adding civilian conquests of the waves. And you can see the image of the Luna Rossa vessel on the reverse side. The timepiece is, of course, powered by Panerai's own caliber 9010. It is a 3-day automatic with a GMT function, or I should say a dual time function, as Truth be told, what you're looking at is a dual-time watch with two 12-hour hands rather than a 24-hour secondary. The timepiece is highly water-resistant, swimmable, and if you look closely, you can see it even respects the sandwich dial fabrication traditions of the Panerai brand by including a stencil of sailcloth over a fully loomed base, giving it a wonderful three-dimensional luminescent aspect at night. The hands, you'll note, have been blackened, so you see only the swatches of lume over the dial. And if you are a yachtsman, this is just about the perfect secondary time zone watch. Blackened in titanium, you have that iconic Panerai locking lever crown, which is not only a wonderful piece of history, as Panerai did indeed include this on the reference 6152 combat watch of the 50s, but it's also distinctive design. I can cover that dial and you still know who made this watch. Throw it on my 16-centimeter circumference wrist, and this 2019 novelty wears easily. I can tell you the ergonomics are excellent, but that's old hat for Paneristi. What you're going to like is that the watch is also quite light because of the titanium, while giving you that all-black aesthetic, absent the risk of a shatter that you might find with a ceramic case. We'll take one last look at the case back. You can see the watch, 300 meters water-resistant, a special piece. I like the use of contrast, not different colors, but different finishes, a combination of media blasting and polish, so the Rossa and the underlying waves really stand out. You'll also note the quick release system for the straps, a push tab system. You push the spring-loaded trigger on the bottom and then you push the bar through. It's more secure than spring bars, and it's also easier to use than the old screw bar system, which forces you to risk your skill with a screwdriver against the finish of the lugs. That is the Panerai Luminor GMT Rossa PAM 1036, launched in 2019. Let's talk a little bit about a watch that, frankly, is the closest thing Girard-Perregaux has to an icon. The Laureato has come and go, but since 2000, the WW.TC is a watch that has embodied the best of Girard-Perregaux. Innovative design, functional complications, and involved watchmaking on every level. This model is part of a 20-piece series in white ceramic that launched back in 2012. It is the WW.TC white ceramic. It has a smoked sapphire over the dial, and it is chock-a-block with features. You've got a world time complication, you've got a flyback chronograph, you've got a date, you have automatic winding, a 46-hour power reserve, 100-meter water resistance, all of that, and of course you have a Girard-Perregaux manufacturer base. It is based on the 3300, this is the 3300 0028. As you can see, it is an artisanal ultra-thin automatic, beautifully made by a high horology brand, and you can see this is a limited edition, number 20 of the 20, and very special. Not all of the WW.TC World Time chronographs are in fact flybacks. This one is a flyback. Moreover, not all of them are 100 meters water resistant. This one is. And with the white ceramic, you have a watch that defies blemishes, scratches, scuffs, marks of any kind. If you're not the type to shatter a sapphire crystal, I'm not, I'm sure most of you aren't, you're going to find this watch will never in any way become disfigured by the ravages of life on the wrist. It also answers the question up front, has this watch ever been refinished? No, it can't be, and it need not be. Take a quick look on the wrist. Although it's a 43mm watch in ceramic, it's feather light. That's something I should mention about ceramic. If you're not familiar with the material, it's not only extremely hard, but it's not very dense, which means it feels almost like titanium on the wrist, and that's probably the best comparison of which I can think. You have a date, automatic winding, 100-meter water resistance, a flyback chronograph, and world time, all of that, and they give you a brilliant clasp that has two special degrees of adjustment built in. You have a push-button system that allows you to push in and make micro adjustments within each side of the trigger-actuated titanium clasp. So you see I have those two separate push-button sliders, so I need not be a prisoner of the cut to the cuttable strap. This one is brand new. You'll cut it to suit, but note you'll be able to make changes even after you do with the two sides of the clasp. A very special watch, and with 20 made, you'll never see another. Let's talk about a different kind of oversized sports watch. In the last 2 years, FP Journe has settled into the 44mm case, and the Octa Sport that you see here represents the bigger and bolder titanium FP Journe Octa Sport models. The timepiece has a ceramic bezel insert, a 44mm titanium case, an integrated titanium bracelet. It is truly feather light, and if we flip it over, you can see the latest version of the Octa Sport caliber 1300 includes aluminum construction as ever on the Octa Sports. So while the case is titanium, the movement itself is not just styled differently than the rose gold and brass Octa movements we saw earlier, but in aluminum it has a unique rotor, unique finish, unique style with all of the underlying toughness, the 5 to 7 day power reserve, the free sprung architecture, and the 5-position chronometer style adjustment that you get in the standard dress watch Octas. Now the timepiece has a lot going on the dial, but the most important feature I should mention is the lume. Unlike standard FP Journe watches, you can see this one easily in the dark. There is a lovely sapphire cap over the small seconds register. You have a day-night index between 8 and 9 o'clock. You have a power reserve indicator, and then you have a double-digit date with 2 discs and a quick set mechanism. This is a timepiece that wears almost like a second skin, in that you can forget it's on the wrist, and you'll shoot panicked glances toward your wrist periodically just to check that it's still in place. Per FP Journe, it is a swimmable watch. Even though it's rated at 30 meters, it is tested beyond that, and you can see it is nice, flat, and flush on the wrist. So though it is an aggressive sports watch, the fit is outstanding on a small wrist, and it's low enough to fit underneath the cuff. Okay, now things are getting a bit crazy. That's right. This is the Urwerk EMC. Launched in 2013, this is probably the most, I would say, lauded or least objectionable, depending on your perspective, implementation of electronics in a mechanical luxury watch. Make no mistake, this is a manual wind 80-hour power reserve beating away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has a mechanical power reserve indicator. It has a hours and minutes analog dial, and it has a oversized seconds display with hacking functionality, a movement that is made entirely by Urwerk. You can see it features twin mainspring barrels to provide the power, and an industrial techno look, entirely hand finished, that incorporates both integrated circuits and an optical sensor that allows you, yes, you, the user, to gauge the timing of your watch. Now, it's not fully wound, but you'll note when I push the plunger on the side, the watch, provided I push it enough, I might need to wind it. You do need to wind it, that's part of the key. But the watch features an indicator which, when wound, and I'll show you how you do that, will jump out and show you whether your watch is running up to 20 seconds fast or 20 seconds slow. You wind it using a Maxton generator. Now this is the part that I omitted before the video. You actually wind the watch like so, and by winding it, you energize a high-tech capacitor that stores the energy for the optical sensor and the integrated circuit that in turn runs what is effectively a chronoscope built into the watch. This is a timing device just like your watchmaker uses, and if I have wound this thing enough, I will demonstrate to you how it operates. Let's hope I wound it enough. Still didn't wind it enough. You have to wind it for about a minute, and then it's good for about a day. But you could see, even the moving components, like the swing arm for the generator, they're built like the components of a high-end Heckler & Koch firearm. Everything about this titanium and steel watch feels military grade. You can even see it is a special limited edition with an individual numbering plate. This is 9 out of 55. It's also brilliant, as there are a number of elements that I wish were included on all Urwerk watches. When you push a trigger on the underside of the lugs, the watch has a pop-out crown. This now allows me to make adjustments to the timepiece, and if I were to pull it out one more detent, I would hack and stop the movement. The dial is elaborately and extensively loomed, and by the way, I might finally be able to do loom shots using this new camera array. Do you want to try it out? Let's go for it. This is all or nothing, guys. I'm 37 minutes into the video and I could wind up wasting the whole thing, but let's give it a shot. I'm still here. All right, for the first time ever on Weekend Watches, a loom shot, and what a loom shot. You can see hours, minutes, and seconds, the power reserve, and I wish I'd wound it a little bit more, the chronoscope device, all visible at night. This is a watch that leaves nothing to be desired. A timepiece of my dreams, at least, and if you're one of those techno-industrial engineering nerds like me, you're gonna fall in love with this thing. Let's talk a little bit about the basics. Let me bring the lights back. This thing rules because not only is it all made by Urwerk, but it's unlike anything else. With hinge lugs, it's 49 millimeters end to end and 43 millimeters across. Throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist and you can see it wears fairly easily. It's not as big and bulky as you might imagine. It's big, make no mistake, but it's not bulky. I would say compare it to something like a Rolex 42mm Explorer 2. That's a good comparison. On the reverse side, one more time, you can see all of the elements, including the ability to change the timing of your watch, as there is a fine-tuning screw, and you can use the screwdriver that's included to actually change the timing of your watch. So if you do what I didn't and wind the darn thing up, you will be able to see how fast or slow it's running, and then you can make adjustments. That's an awful lot of trust on the part of Felix Baumgartner, your Urwerk watchmaker. There's even an index inside to allow you to make those adjustments, and you can see it is in fact a mechanical watch. Alright, what could possibly cap a show like that and follow that Urwerk? How about something that is spectacular in its simplicity? That's right, the 2012 boutique exclusive, legend in its own time, Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso Rouge. Under 7.5 millimeters thick and only 46.5 millimeters lug to lug. The timepiece measures approximately 28 millimeters across, and on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see this is a very fresh strap from JLC. It is the consummate historically inspired dress watch. No, it is the ultimate historically inspired dress watch. Outdoing its historical predecessor, it is a classic in its own right. You can see the dial Reverso after the original, which would have featured a Tavannes movement and a Wenger case. JLC didn't exist when the Reverso was created in 1931 and the original Reverso Rouge was made. It was instead the quarterback coordinating the construction of the then revolutionary rotating body sports watch. Inside, a JLC manufacturer caliber 822-1 free-sprung manual wind 45-hour power reserve, shaped and sized for the case, with a red lacquer dial that explodes off your wrist and applique polished steel indices. This watch leaves nothing to be desired. Graceful on its case back, and you can see it was indeed a special edition. The Reverso Rouge, made in a few hundred pieces, not mass-produced. It is both the icon of Jaeger-LeCoultre and perhaps the greatest historical tribute watch of all time. If you want the ultimate dress watch, look no farther. And this one, uncustomized, a blank canvas for your own personalization through JLC, enameling, engraving, lacquering, anything your imagination can sustain. Thanks so much, guys. This has been a truly special episode of Weekend Watches. Remember, everything here is for sale. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Prices, sales, and trades. I'm always listening. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, be well, and I'll see you this Wednesday.